It's estimated there could be as many as 2,000 people abusing drugs in Dunedin, and some of them are making life miserable for doctors. Good evening. Doctors are coming under pressure from drug abusers to prescribe the drugs they want, and it's not just hard drugs. Doctors are faced with young people determined to get their hands on anything that will alter their state of mind. As Kathy Graham reports, that sometimes puts GPs and their property at risk.
Break-ins by drug abusers have become a regular feature of doctors' lives in recent years. In the past 6 months, 5 Dunedin surgeries were burgled. Doctors' cars and homes are also a regular target. Nowadays, it's hard to find a doctor who keeps any of the drugs addicts or abusers are after. And it's hard to find one who hasn't been conned, hassled or threatened by abusers after a prescription.
Well, the guy came in asking for drugs. I'd given them to him because he'd had some problems with pain earlier on and told him I wasn't prepared to continue prescribing them. He got a bit angry about it. I tried to calm him down, but he wasn't having any of it, and he finally let fly with a kick and hit me in the bottom lip just there.
I had a bicycle chain pulled on me in London once. 15 years ago in Britain, a couple of doctors were killed by drug seekers. There has been violence in New Zealand from drug seekers. So it's there, the threat's there. Not from most, but from a few, I'm sure.
Once I remember a couple of addicts came on a weekend here, and you're the only one person here, and they wanted pain relief for their migraines, you know, which was the story, and I felt unsafe enough to give them an injection of plain water, assuring them it would work on their way home. And as soon as they left, I quickly went and locked the doors.
They can just be very manipulative and very demanding and persistent, and they just try and wear you down, and they can spend 3/4 of an hour quite easily just talking and pressuring you and saying, couldn't you do this, couldn't you do that, just a little bit here, a little bit there, and they can be terribly persuasive.
After about 10 years of dealing with drug abusers, doctors have come to recognise certain signs. What they're most wary of is a new patient who's young and claims to be suffering pain.
I'm Dr. Jones, and you're?
Martin.
Good. Martin, now, what can I do for you, Martin?
Yeah, I'm just down from Christchurch, ran out of pills.
And what seems to be the trouble?
Well, yeah, I got a lot of back pain. The doctor was giving me Temgesic for it.
Ah, yes. Well, Temgesic is an addictive drug, and I don't usually prescribe drugs like those to people who aren't my regular patients.
Yeah, I'm not a drug addict or anything, eh? It was real sore.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The doctor in Christchurch gives them to me.
Yes, well, look, I'm sorry, but I don't. Now, look, if you're having problems with drugs, I could refer you to someone who can give you some help if you wanted some. Martin?
I think in a lot of cases they don't actually want help in a medical sense. I think they come to you because they want a ready supply of drugs. And I think the danger that we very frequently fall into is that we try to help them, and we maybe do give them something to tide them over. And once you've done that once, then they're on your doorstep from then on.
I was a new doctor down on the main street when I first started in practice, and, you know, trying to build a practice so I'd see anyone that came off the street. Now, the druggies aren't silly, and they pretty soon worked out that here's a new doctor, he's a bit green, and he'll see anybody, and, you know, let's give him a go. And I quite frankly got fed up with saying no quite often. You know, sometimes I'd see 6 people in a row, and 6 people in a row would ask me for drugs.
When I first started, they all came out of the woodwork. They thought you were an easy target, and they were just coming out to try you on. But as soon as they got the message, you know, in the last year, I don't think I've had anyone in normal surgery coming and asking for drugs.
Hello, surgery.
Hello, medical centre.
Mornington Health Centre. Nowadays, a telephone warning system quickly alerts every GP in town when a suspicious patient is doing the rounds.
I our staff would answer the phone. There'd be a doctor on the other end of the line, and he'd say, "There's a young woman, rather shabbily dressed, 5'6" in height, with brown hair and a tattoo of LOVE over her right knuckles and HATE over her left knuckles, and a small blue dot just on the outer corner of her left eye, and she's seeking." She says that she has arthritis of her hip and a recent operation from which she's getting intractable pain, and she's seeking Palfium.
Nobody seems to know exactly how many people are regularly abusing drugs. One doctor with a good deal of experience estimates there could be as many as 2,000 people in Dunedin alone. Here at the Substance Abuse Service, staff admit they're only dealing with the tip of an iceberg.
We've got about 50 people on the clinic books, with about another 50 on the waiting list.
Do you see any role in the Substance Abuse Service to take the pressure off doctors so that these patients aren't presenting and just looking for whatever they can get?
There will always be those people who if they don't get what they feel they are entitled to, drugs, will attempt to get them from whatever source they can. And if we have a policy and they feel that they're not getting what they believe they need from us, they will try and extort it by whatever means, either by direct threats or indirectly by playing on the doctor's need to help, to assist, on the doctor's sympathies.
Do you feel that it's an occupational hazard that you just sort of have to live with?
Yeah, you take certain precautions, and it's just something you can live with. You have to live with. You can't stop drug addicts from getting drugs unless you make it freely available. I mean, that's a different question altogether.
I've probably got about 20-odd people off drugs in the time, but I wouldn't do it again. The cost to me was too high, and I think other people do it better. I think you really do need a team approach.
Very difficult to know what authorities can do about it. There are things that doctors can do about it, and one of those is simply to refuse to provide drugs that affect the mind to any young person who isn't well known to them.
The problems drug abusers like Martin create for doctors have shocked hospital authorities. They've asked them to supply details of any threats they receive. In the meantime, it's acknowledged that as long as there are abusers on the streets, there's a problem for doctors.
Kathy Graham with that report. Kathy's story didn't include figures relating to cannabis, but that's been the subject of a big police operation in Otago and Southland over the past fortnight. Police have been searching the region, pulling up plants and trying to pull in growers. They've had limited success. Unlike this operation back in January, when 7,000 plants were recovered from a small gully near Tidy Mouth, a helicopter sweep over a big area netted only 1,400 plants. The operation, the tail end of a New Zealand-wide swoop, involved 17 police officers and 9 days of helicopter flying. 5 people were arrested for cannabis cultivation and 7 for possession. There was a big fire scare on Otago Peninsula today as an out-of-control burn-off threatened homes at Harrington Point. As Bernard Buck reports, fire appliances from 3 stations were called to the blaze.
The fire started mid-morning and could be seen from well up the Otago harbour. It began with a Bracken burn-off. When it got out of control, units were called in from Portobello and 2 Dunedin stations. Using 4 appliances, water was drawn from the Otago harbour. The main concern was that the wind from the northeast would change direction and put houses at Harrington Point in jeopardy. While some of the homes are at present unoccupied, a local youngster got a bird's-eye view. The fire was under control by early afternoon.
Now the temperatures and some ballooning above Lake Hayes. At 3 o'clock today, Half Moon Bay with rain and the low of 9 degrees. Invercargill cloudy 13, Gore fine and 16. Balclutha windy and 16. Dunedin partly cloudy 14. Palmerston sunny and 14. And Oamaru cloudy and 12. Curragh partly cloudy 16, Ranfurly fine and 18, Queenstown partly cloudy 15, Wanaka partly cloudy 2 and 19, Alexandra partly cloudy, the high of 21, and Taiana windy and 14. And the expected highs for tomorrow are Dunedin 12 and Invercargill 10 degrees. A collection of rare and interesting animals was assembled for an open day at the weekend at the Plain Station near Belfast. The biggest representation was of a breed of pig thought to have been brought to New Zealand by the Māori. Peter Cruikshank went to find out more.
The Kunekune pig was brought from the North Island, and now there are hundreds of them, with a strong young breed society to foster their distinctive characteristics. The 70-odd pigs were examined before a rapt audience of enthusiasts, and we got the odd pointer as well.
It's personal preference as to what colour you breed. I know down the west coast, on the South Island, we've got a lot of quite red ones. This is a Kunekune boar, which is, as you can see by the tusks, beautiful boar. And they have a wattle, or piri-piri, as we know them, which hang under the chin on both sides. They're terribly great-natured. As you can see, they'll open their mouth. You can open the mouths of the boars quite happily, and he'll show you his teeth.
They're keen on biscuits or anything a human offers, but their main strength is that they're vegetarians and will graze on grass happily, without apparently the urge to root up the turf like the European pigs. Some people look on them as an animal akin to sheep and cattle. But while they're a bit of an oddity, they're nothing compared to the alpaca from South America, or merinos found in the Hokanui Hills after a century of doing their own thing. Other distinctive animals are the merinos from Arapawa Island in the Marlborough Sounds, with a white spot on their forehead. And another island sheep from Pitt Island also come from the Marlborough Sounds. Not as fascinating as Rex rabbits for some people, though. The last word, though, seemed to go to a little piggy who went to market.
Some of you may have seen yesterday's live television pictures from the Royal Albatross colony at Tairoa Head on the Otago Peninsula. Albatross Watch was the first of what could become regular live natural history broadcasts from around New Zealand. Alan Brady went along to watch the Albatross Watches.
Okay, so that's the first thing we see is an albatross flying, and is that with music or something?
No, we'll have our little opening titles. We decided we'd use the opening titles for this segment too.
Sandwiched between soccer and sailing on Sunday grandstand, this was to be television's newest sport, big-time birdwatching, with 6 cameras catching the live performance from Tairoa Head of one of nature's most graceful creatures. Most wildlife films seen on television are painstakingly packaged over many months and produced in documentary form. Television New Zealand's Dunedin-based Natural History Unit was breaking new ground with this broadcast, which assembled all the electronic gadgetry associated with one-day cricket on a windy promontory at the head of Otago Harbour.
Stand by, everyone.
Okay, Don, stand by.
5 seconds, 4, 3, roll opening, 1.
The below hatch is on radio.
12 seconds, fade audio, 8 seconds, 7, 6, 5, 4,
stand by,
3,
Peter.
2, 1.
Cue, Peter.
Well, as you can see, and thank you, Philip, it's a warm, sunny day here at Tairoa Head. And could we suggest, seriously, that the J-Boat team adopt this bird as their symbol for the campaign for the America's Cup?
Neil Harraway, what on earth are Albatross is doing on Sunday grandstand?
Well, I'm not sure why they're in the sports program, Alan, but really we're here for the whole afternoon, and starting midday and ending right in the evening, to see what happens with the albatross chicks and hopefully the visits they have from adults during the afternoon. So although it's a little coincidental they're in sport, maybe it is a gentler kind of sport.
A taste of things to come, perhaps?
Yes, we hope now to stage 2 live OBs a year, 2 nature watches. We're keen in the Natural History Unit to diversify, if you like, from the more conventional documentaries or studio-based programs.
In fact, last year we had a catamaran designer in New Zealand making inquiries.
We've been here for 2 weeks recording material in case nothing happens on the day and in case the weather is really bad on the day. So going live shows the audience, hopefully, that it isn't all action non-stop with wildlife, that There are long periods when nothing happens.
As young birds, they leave the colony, travel the southern oceans without touching land for nearly 4 years.
To see the albatross flying is, I think, as exciting as watching a soccer game. There's no score at the end of it, but that's all right, you know, people might get used to that.
TVNZ plans more live-action natural history broadcasts, including a satellite link-up with a dozen other countries in the BBC World Safari series next year.
Nice to end the programme on a high note. We'll be back tomorrow. Good night.